Hello and welcome back to our series of normal, regular monthly updates. And this month we have a full house, so we have all of the members of the Fun Skills 3, as it were, here today, which is quite unusual for us. So just a round robin to put everybody's names to faces, as it were. So hello, I'm Catherine. I'm one of the technical advisors. Paul, do you want to
Hello, I'm Paul. I'm the other technical advisor.
And I'm Amanda Kelly. I'm the industry manager, and I have a very unsecure connection at the moment, so I may immediately disappear as soon as I finish speaking. So good afternoon, everybody.
That's great, thank you. So we won't keep our cameras on all through this afternoon, so that should actually help a little bit. So this month we're getting back to the new normal, so life after the centre assessed grades, as it were. And during today's webinar, we're looking at summarising where we are this year and how we're looking at how we can support you for the next academic year. So before we move on, also I just want to explain, just to say, if you are having technical difficulties, the best thing to do is just to log out and then log back in, and that should put itself right. Okay, moving on.
So we're going to change our usual way of delivering today's webinar. What we're going to try and do particularly is make this session a little bit more interactive than usual. So we're going to be sort of adding some details for later on. But given that there are quite a few of you on this call, typically we have kind of several hundred people joining these live sessions. We're going to be using the question box a little bit differently, so we can monitor and answer your questions and particularly not miss anything vital. For anyone not joining us live and listening back to the recording later, you can still interact and send us your information and views to the pre-employment inbox. The address is shown at the bottom of this slide, so you can see it kind of here. So what we're going to do for now is just momentarily turn off the question box. We're not going to be having a regular webinar next month, as we're going to be starting this sort of refreshed series of networks, webinars and other support from September. However, this will require you to sign up for the new webinar series. So we're starting from September with a clean sheet, and we'll be sending out an email in due course with a new link so everyone can sign up. So before we move on further, we're now going to switch our cameras off, just so you get a chance to concentrate on the slides rather than our mug shots, and we'll move on.
Okay, so before we get into the main part of the session, it's time for this month's In Case You Missed It. So firstly, you may have seen that the Education and Skills Funding Agency have announced recently that it's extending the suspension of its normal requirement that apprentices on a standard or framework that requires maths and English qualification achievements at level 1 must also work towards and attempt assessment in functional skills at level 2. The take the test rule now won't be coming back until at least next January. The ESFA have also confirmed that apprentices currently awaiting the outcome of a calculated result for any functional skills qualifications still to be achieved can proceed through the gateway in the meantime, as long as their provider believes that they will be successful. In other words, as long as the CAG submission recommended them for a pass.
Moving on swiftly, second amongst our In Case You Missed It, you've hopefully seen that we have now started accepting bookings again for functional skills exams. For on-screen tests delivered through the Evolve system, they were switched on at the beginning of last week, so they are now operating as normal. We're also now able to accept bookings for paper delivered exams as of the beginning of this week, although bearing in mind there's a 14-day lead-in for these, the earliest in practice that it would be possible to take one of these tests will be during the first week of August.
And finally, if you attended our functional skills launch events last summer, you may recall receiving a Maths Ready or English Ready digital credential as your certificate of attendance. Well, we're now pressing ahead with our plan to issue digital credentials to every candidate who achieves a functional skills qualification with City and Guilds. Digital badges will initially be available for just the post-reform functional skills mathematics and functional skills English qualifications, although we will be making them available for ICT as well in due course. We're also starting to issue digital credentials to successful essential skills candidates in Wales and Northern Ireland. It's important to be clear that these actual credentials won't replace the actual qualification certificates or e-certificates that we will continue to issue, but it does provide learners with something they can share more easily with prospective employers and others, especially as the metadata lurking behind each badge will include a summary of the relevant functional skills subject content. And before we move on from just in case you missed it, I quite like that actually, just in case you missed it, could we just remind you again about the new email address for the Maths, English, ESOL and employability team? That is preemployment@cityandguilds.com. It replaces the old FS Reform mailbox, although anything sent there will still reach us for the time being. Now that we're actually resuming normal assessment arrangements for our various maths and English qualifications, some of the questions that have been posed during the early days of lockdown before the government's directive about grade estimation for functional skills and the extraordinary regulation arrangements are now starting to reappear in our inboxes. We did publish the interim guidance published back in March for functional skills before it became clear that it all would be expected to go through the CAG process, but in practice what we said then effectively still stands.
So to cover a couple of very specific points. Firstly, it is still possible to carry out speaking, listening and communicating assessments for functional skills English remotely. We're not saying, we never have said that they must be done that way, but where it is appropriate to do so, for example, where learners are comfortable and capable of completing their discussions and presentations in a virtual environment, and where there are appropriate facilities available, then by all means, please go ahead. And also, just to clarify, this no longer needs to be seen as a COVID-specific mitigation arrangement, and we will, in due course, be updating our standard speaking, listening, communicating guidance documents for the reformed qualifications to make this absolutely clear. Things are a little more complicated when it comes to the speaking, listening and communication component within the legacy functional skills English qualifications, mostly because the regulatory criteria for these framed remote speaking listening as an access arrangement. So if you are looking to do this for the legacy qualifications, you will need to clear this with our policy team. Second point that's come up quite a lot in recent conversations is about who can and can't invigilate functional skills exams. Again, nothing has materially changed as a result of COVID. You can't invigilate if you're directly involved in teaching the subject or if you're related to the candidate, but otherwise it's ultimately up to centres to identify and brief suitable people to carry out invigilation. So there's no inherent reason, there never has been, why employers cannot be involved. And likewise, any premises can be used if initially cleared with us as an assessment site. There is an exceptions process for instances where a centre has very specific operational constraints that necessitate tutors being involved in invigilation. As we've indicated before, and it has come up in a number of previous sessions, this isn't a free pass, but the forms can be used to initiate a conversation with our quality team about possible alternative arrangements. Another hot topic at the moment is the prospect of remote invigilation using proctoring software or similar. Just to be absolutely clear about this, we are exploring it for a number of apprenticeship endpoint assessments where these involve on-screen testing, and there has been some communications about this in the last few days, but this isn't currently possible for high stakes and high volume qualifications such as functional skills. Now, that's not to say that we're not keen to explore it, we absolutely are, but just in terms of managing people's expectations, there are quite a few technical and regulatory hurdles to overcome first. So we will in due course be looking for people to trial this, but for the time being, the work that's immediately going ahead with this is purely about endpoint assessments for apprenticeships. Okay, time for another update on the centre assessment grading process. Apologies for the dog making a little bit of noise in the background. We are now in the process of completing quality assurance for each of the CAG submissions that were submitted recently ahead of results publication at the end of this month. Already we have started to issue a few preliminary results for this, or releasing those to the Walled Garden, but please do treat these as provisional, as we are still carrying out some further checks and there is a possibility that they might still change. Equally, don't worry if your learners' results aren't visible yet, as for various technical reasons, the process of releasing results has to be done gradually. The crucial date as far as this process is concerned is Friday, the 31st of July. That's when any calculated results determined through this process become official and the point at which they may be shared with learners. Even though it might be tempting to do so, please don't share any of that provisional data that might be visible in the Walled Garden ahead of that formal publication date. And please also bear in mind that if you're one of the centres that was granted an extension to the CAG submission deadline and your submission wasn't received by us by the 1st of July, there is a possibility that your learners' results might be delayed by a further few days. But again, anything visible on or after that date can be treated as definitive. Just anything that appears before Friday of next week, the 31st of July, can't be shared just yet.
And now for something free, another digital credential. This is a short e-learning module that is designed to support centres and learners as you return to the workplace. You may have started to see this come up on social media recently. It contains 4 topics and takes around 15 to 20 minutes to complete, and the modules it covers is correct hand hygiene, use of personal protective equipment, safe working practices to protect yourself and others, and your social responsibility. And a lot of people have been using this prior to going back into establishments, and a lot of feedback is that it's really good for tutors and learners. Sorry, Paul.
Okay, it would be. Sorry.
No,
okay,
go ahead.
It would be remiss of us not to say something about traineeships, given the UK government's recent announcement about extra funding for 16 to 24-year-olds in England. Traineeships are, of course, nothing new. They've been around for quite a few years now, although if we're honest about this, they have struggled a bit for policymakers' attention alongside the big changes that we've seen in the last few years to apprenticeships. On the back of the extra 111 million that has been promised, there are hints that the model for traineeships in England might change, but as things stand, they are expected to last anywhere between 6 weeks and 6 months, with core content, a work placement, and then the option of a vocational element. When we're talking about traineeships here, it is important to be clear that the programmes called traineeships in Wales and Northern Ireland are not the same as the model that currently exists in England. They're also not covered directly by the Chancellor's announcement, although I do expect the devolved administrations to announce similar schemes in due course. There is more information about the range of qualifications and support that we offer that are potentially relevant to traineeships on our traineeships microsite, and that's cityandguilds.com/traineeships, and you can go there to get more information.
Okay, so now to gain some of your insights and views and to make things a little bit more interactive, we've got 3 quick polls. If you're listening on catch up, you can still send your views via the pre-employment at cityandguilds.com emails address. So do you want to launch those for us, Paul?
Okay, poll number 1 is now hopefully open. And
Okay,
that's how might your still in progress. It looks like about half of you voted so far, so we'll just give you a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to close that one now. Okay, we have the results. I don't know if this is all correct, but about 16% of you are saying that you will deliver all of your provision virtually next year. Just over half of you, 54%, blended but with a bias towards virtual. About a quarter of you, 24%, blended but mostly face-to-face, and then 7% are envisaging all face-to-face all face-to-face delivery. So on to the next poll, and we will hit the launch button again. Just give that a second to come up. Yeah. Do you envisage a significant change to when you run your exams and assessments during 2020 and 21? And really what we're asking is, do you plan to do them earlier than usual, later than usual, or about the same time? Appreciate that's a bit of a crystal ball gazing question, but we're just interested in what you're broadly expecting to happen at this point. About 70% of you voted. I'll just give you a few more seconds. I think that's most of you. Now, yeah, 80% voted. So I'm going to close the poll now. Interesting. Most of you, about two-thirds of you saying same as usual. About 22%, a bit later than usual, and about 12% earlier than usual. So again, thanks for that. We'll just go on to the third poll, and this is sort of builds on the same theme. So hopefully you can see that now. Again, appreciate this is a little bit of crystal ball gazing, but it'd be interesting just to get a sense of when you think the bulk of your exams and assessments are going to happen over the coming year. Okay, most people do seem to have voted. We'll just give you a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now. So most people, well, nearly 70% of you saying ongoing throughout the year. So that's kind of interesting and useful to know. I guess we had a hunch that that may well have been the case anyway. But beyond that, about 10%, well, about 10% sort of from next June onwards, about 13% from March, between March and May, and then a handful of people running them during the autumn and through to next February. So again, that's brilliant. Thanks very much for that. Thanks for all three of those. Throw back to Catherine just for the next bit of what we were going to run through, which was to
right. Thank you, Paul.
What we're envisaging.
Thank you, Paul. Building on last month's webinar then, this is broadly how we're planning to move forward with these various ways to support your delivery of maths and English. Broadly, there are 6 categories here. Each has got a distinct purpose and focus as described here. We'd welcome any further thoughts as we refine each of these over the summer. So we really would like some more of your insights in terms of each one of these, and feel free, you could put those in the question box when we open that back up again, or you can use the pre-employment email address and send us to them there. Okay, Paul?
Which is a good prompt for me to switch the question function back on again. So hopefully you can now ask questions, and I will just flip on to the next slide, which has those on. So really what we're going to do now, and I will also just put my camera back on again, just give me a second to do that. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, see me again now. I think what we'd like to do is time for your questions. What we'd particularly like to know is anything that you particularly envisage doing differently from next year, kind of building on the polls that we were talking about a second ago. Are there any big changes that you're planning to your curriculum, and do you envisage there being any big changes to the profile of your learners over the coming year? But do feel free to ask anything else that has occurred to you kind of in the last few minutes, or anything else that might be broadly relevant to this discussion. So any big questions coming through so far?
Just a quick question from Sarah about what browser does the Evolve platform support? Now, has there been an update?
There is a big update to the Evolve system coming in the next few months, mostly because without getting really technical, because some of the current sort of modern version of it actually still relies on the use of Flash, and I think most people will be aware Flash ceases to be supported software or a supported plugin after the end of this year. So there's a rapid move to kind of introduce an updated version of the Evolve system. The current version of Evolve, my understanding is that we recommend Microsoft Explorer as the most stable platform to sort of run it on, and certainly the OpenAssess that obviously operates alongside the live testing software, we'd certainly encourage Explorer for that as the most reliably safe platform.
Great, thank you. Deborah's just fed back to us. Thank you for that, Deborah, about you're not changing your delivery, but you're welcoming further teach meets. So that is something that we are planning. Thank you. And then another quick question from Bev. How are the digital badges shared? So Bev, you will get an email and you can log in and download that, and you can share it on your social media platforms. I know we've been doing that. I've done my safe return to work one as well recently. You're probably starting to see that an awful lot on social media. I'm just looking now for you, Paul.
I'm still here, yes, yeah. What I was going to say, just on the credentials, one of the practical issues around issuing them to functional skills candidates is that we will obviously need to issue that in a form where they can use them and share them and make them available, or where applicable, make them available on their social media platforms as well. But the actual way that the badge is issued is it's issued obviously and held. There's an account created for each user, but once your badge has been issued, you've got an image that can be shared, but you've also got a link to the metadata that sits behind it that kind of summarizes broadly what you had to do to get the badge. And in the case of functional skills, what we've done is created a short summary of the subject content for that skill and level, and that's then obviously available. There's a way of being able to kind of quickly describe what you had to do to get your functional skills qualification.
Thanks, Paul. We're just getting lots of info, which we've been asking for. That's wonderful. Thank you. So please keep contributing those ideas. Paul, would you like to just repeat? We've had a question and somebody was asking why there is why is there going to be a delay on the remote exams for functional skills? Would you just like to repeat the information that we gave?
I mean, just to be clear, and I guess there's a little bit of history to this in that we did some initial work before Easter, and people may have seen big story in the education press that kind of surfaced at that point, and we'd started doing some initial groundwork at that point that was looking at, I'm honest, a fairly improvised solution, but nevertheless a means by which that could potentially be done. That at that point got fairly rapidly overtaken by the government announcing that anyone doing functional skills exams this summer would, or anyone due to do functional skills exams this summer would get a calculated result. So that immediately forced us to put that work on hold. What we are though doing, and having looked at this further, we are developing a model that we are reasonably confident about will work with endpoint assessment for apprenticeships, and actually the regulatory situation around doing those and often some of the practical challenges around those are somewhat more straightforward than they are for a quite complex exam like functional skills, where there are lots of quite complicated item types and different tools that need to be supported through whatever means we use for delivering things. So we've got a little bit more practical work to do to make this feasible for functional skills, but there are also regulatory obstacles to overcome, because this would constitute a formal change to the assessment model for functional skills. So it is something where we need regulatory approval to officially push ahead with it. Now, we are keen to push ahead with that as soon as we possibly can, but I think we want to be clear on two fronts, that obviously we're absolutely sure that with the numbers doing functional skills, that this model is scalable and workable and can deal with the large numbers of learners that would be doing functional skills this way. Also that it's a feasible model that can work, but also that we can reassure Ofqual and other colleagues on the regulatory side that we're able to support and sustain this model. So it is something we're keen to press ahead with. So it's a not yet rather than a no. But obviously, just to be clear, it's not functional skills is not in scope for that very immediate piece of work that we've been pressing ahead with for endpoint assessments.
Great, thank you, Paul. Just moving on, I'm not sure if you can answer this one, Amanda, if you've still got signal or if we've lost you. I'm not sure if Paul knows this one, or we might have to take this one away. For centres that have been quality assured and expect a delay with calculated results confirmation, does the rule still apply of any results showing in walled garden on or after the 31st of July is confirmed?
Hello, I don't know whether you can hear me.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, good.
So I think that's something that I would need to take offline just to check, because my assumption is that if the quality assurance team have been in touch with you to look at your results, they will be having a bit of a dialogue with you about when the results will be available. So if what Catherine will do is flag that question for me, and then I'll take that away and check with the quality team exactly what the process is, if that helps.
Yeah. I mean, I think we could be confident that anything that appears on the walled garden before next Friday is provisional. I mean, how likely it is in practice to change? I mean, there's possibility whilst we're still doing that further background work. But yeah, I guess the question is anything that sort of starts to appear after that date, and what will happen.
Nikki, it might be worth what I can do is we can get back to you and reply directly to you. It might be worth, if you want to send that question into the pre-employment inbox for us, and so we can get response to you, so you've got that information. Thank you, Amanda. I'm just looking at through the questions now. Lots of information, so that's really good. Sorry, I'm just there's quite a lot, so I'm just going through them now. Yeah.
Sorry, I just interrupt. I saw a question as they were whizzing past about the essential digital skills qualifications. So just briefly say that City and Guilds is beginning to develop its essential digital skills qualifications in response to the legal entitlement for adults. We're at very early stages, and we are interested in hearing from centres who would like to feed into the process of developing those qualifications. So if that's something that interests you, if you could drop a line to the pre-employment box with your contact details, then we will add you to that rather valuable list of people to work with. Sorry, Catherine, I interrupted.
No, that's great. Thank you, Amanda. That's really useful. I just want to clarify on one. Somebody's put in the question. It's really important that they understand this. Could you please re-clarify? We cannot use online conferencing to assess functional skills, speaking, listening, and communicating exams.
No, speaking listening absolutely can do it. The issue was around invigilation for the externally marked exams. You have to have an invigilator physically present in the room for those to happen. But speaking listening, there is scope within the current regulatory arrangements for us to allow that, so we are allowing it, and indeed we're actually making that a permanent kind of fixture, in the sense of there are some conditions around doing it in terms of ensuring that that there is a recording, and there's some other sort of expectations around obviously making the output available for external quality assurance, but the discussion can happen. The discussions
are worth saying, Paul, that only applies to the reformed functional skills.
Yeah.
So for the legacy qualification, there's slightly different rules. So if that is something that you would like to put in place for the legacy, then contact us and we will discuss that further with you.
Yeah. It's just a little bit, the regulatory side is just a little bit more complicated for legacy. Yeah, I mean, in practice, we may well be able to find a way through it for you, but you do need to have a conversation with our policy team first.
And on that speaking and listening one, somebody's asking about, no, you don't need to invite your EQA to all of the meetings. No, not for the speaking and listening. And also there's a question on about signatures for learners for the write-ups. So I believe we don't need to have learner signatures if it's done remotely. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think we issued some guidance a while ago about authenticating where the candidate isn't physically present. So that would obviously hold in this instance here. Although we tend to assume candidates being physically present to sign, what we're actually after is a process of affirming and confirming authenticity, and if there's a electronic means by which that can be done, then that's absolutely fine.
I don't know if there's quite a few other questions, Paul, and lots of information.
Just
so
scanning for a few more that might be useful.
Amanda, is there anything else that you want to add before we start wrapping things up?
I have to remember to unmute myself, sorry. I think some of the feedback we've got in these questions is really useful, so I think we're going to take it offline, and we'll use that as part of our preparation for post-COVID guidance for functional skills and other maths and English qualifications, because some of the questions you're asking sort of are about what's next. So we're going to take those forward and help improve guidance that we have available. But I don't think there's anything else just at the moment. I'm still scrolling.
Yeah, there's quite a few other ones. There's nothing sort of jumping out. No, I think that's the main one from me. Paul, is there anything else that you wanted to add before we finish off?
See if there's anything else of note. Yeah, there's a few questions about other areas such as ITQ, but again, I think maybe as well to take those offline and deal with them sort of elsewhere. Another question about will Teach Meets continue? Will we be sent links to join those automatically? Yes, I think the short answer is yes.
There is a question about Open Assess. So we're working quite hard at the moment to get all the available samples onto Open Assess. Yeah.
There's also another question here. Somebody said they've had technical difficulties. So Deanna, yeah, you will be able to access the webinar recording from the web page. Yeah, on the Functional Skills website. So the recordings will be there in their usual place.
A couple of questions about how to access the Safe Return to Work e-learning module. There is actually just a link to that on the main sittinggirls.com site, isn't there, if I remember rightly?
Yeah, I think we've put the link on the actual slide deck as well. Yes,
Yeah,
it has.
yeah.
So when you access the slides on that actual slide 8, you will be able to just click on the hyperlink and it'll take you straight there.
Okay, that might be, just looking to see if there's any more questions that anybody can.
I think we'll take all of the rest back then, Paul, shall we?
Yeah.
I'm just conscious of time. All right then. So I think then that's it. Let me just go down to the bottom. So it just remains to say thank you for joining us this month. We hope you have a well-deserved break for anyone who is lucky enough to get away or just able to take some time off during August. And we look forward to getting back together with you in September, when hopefully we'll all be one step closer to getting back to normal, whatever that may look like. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you in September. Thank you. Bye.
Once again, bye now.